All right, let's talk about it. First topic, pacing. What are we talking about here? The difference between a book and a show in terms of pacing.
So there are 7 books in the Foundation series. There are the 3 originals, 2 prequels, and 2 sequels. Is that correct?
I think that's right.
They're either 7 or 8, and they're supposed to be 8 seasons of this show, right? So the timeline seemed to line up pretty nicely with the number of books covering 1 book per season. After watching the first half of the first season, I'm going to say that there is absolutely no way they get through the rest of book 1 in this season. Because in the first book, we are not even a third of the way through that book.
I agreed.
There are 3 big changes in the Foundation for the first book. They start off as this sort of like, the setup of it, right? The what is Terminus? What is the Foundation? And then they evolve from, this fledgling settlement society to a religion, and then they evolve past the religion with the whole Anacreon Thespis stuff to a merchant society. So those are huge changes, not just on like a, they got to do all this stuff. No, they have to change everything about Terminus, and the stories they've been telling have been so small in scope comparatively. I just don't think there's any way we get even halfway through the first book in this first season.
Yeah, and I don't know that bothers me, because clearly, like all the stuff that they brought in about race thus far, I understand this came from one of the prequels. So I think, are they a third of the way through the 7-book series? At this halfway point in the first, that seems like a less scary way to be like, oh, okay, well, that's not bad. So like if they can bring in, this isn't like Game of Thrones where everything is just like, you got Game of Thrones, and then you got the Storm of Swords, and then you got the Clash of Kings, and then you got, like this is, even in order of publication, this stuff wasn't like in chronological order. So if they go back and interleave all that stuff, I think there's plenty of material. And then they're also just expanding on stuff like this Klingon stuff that didn't exist. I don't know if the sequels or prequels flesh out the Gale stuff, but I think there's but I think that people seem to get antsy about the 15 minutes of like, oh, this is just repeated information. If they go back and let's say we get a 20-minute vignette of Salvor Hardin's childhood, and like, what if they reenact the scene of her mom crawling to get her underneath the, like, I could see them doing that, and I could see it pissing off a lot of people. And they're again saying that like, we're just retreading information we already know. And I do think that there is a lot. I side with you when you said, well, yeah, we knew it intellectually, but we didn't know what it was like emotionally, and that's important to their character.
Yeah.
I think that, but like if it feels like the show is deliberately slowing down the pace, I could see people losing their patience with it. I'm not saying it's happened so far, but
I mean, it could be a case where we get through the plot of the first 3, as written, the first 3 Foundation novels. But we've pulled in so many pieces, so many elements of what makes the prequels and the sequels what they are, that you won't really miss any of that stuff, because it will kind of be contained. It won't, conceptually and thematically, it'll be contained within what we get in the series. I don't know. I don't really know what the plan is. Maybe, when we talk with Goyer, he could perhaps illuminate that some, though he has on the official podcast a bit too.
I will say that his, they confirmed, I think a week or 2 ago, Apple said that they have renewed Foundation for season 2.
Yeah.
Regardless of how many people are watching this season, what the critics say, we are going to get guaranteed a second season. And usually, almost every show I watch, you learn a lot about making the show to first season, and things kind of get kind of smooth and gel more, and the plot lines start to come together. So I'm glad. I was really worried that like it might be one and done, because who knows what Apple's metrics are, and some prominent TV critics are kind of, not panned it, but said it's kind of like, eh. So I'm glad we're going to get at least 2 seasons of this thing. So we'll see how the pacing goes out. Related to this, I've read the original 3-book trilogy, and the curveball they throw Psychohistory in, I think the 3rd book, and they've already name checked it in the very beginning of the episode when she's listing off names of people, and she mentions the Mule. So the Mule is in the first psychic with precognition in the Foundation galaxy. And because it was an unknown type of person who can see into the future and thus affect it, there's like this big shadow cast over psychohistory of like uncertainty and doubt. And a lot of the third book is revolving, does Harry have a plan for the unplannable? Is there a way that you can get the predictions on track? Is there a variable that you like, the relativity, you had the special relativity and then you had the general that kind of explained everything. Is there some kind of, that form of psychohistory where you put a new variable for precogs and you can still kind of like get back the history going and accounted for? It's wild that they are bringing that stuff like right away. Like it seems obvious to me that they are hinting with Gale, especially. Yeah. The fact she has bad feelings and she has like, premonitions and stuff and like
waking
Salver,
up during the transport. Yeah.
100%. And Salver, she already is doing these like crazy things with the coin flipping and the fact that she can kind of divine what was going on in Farrah's mind and her history and all that stuff. Seems like they're tackling that stuff front and center, which is such a huge change. Like, I wonder like what other kind of like butterfly flaps are going to, instead of that being like the last reveal or the last kind of challenge that it's kind of woven into the story at the beginning. That's the thing that I find the most fascinating about the pacing. Like that's pretty wild.
That's big. I haven't read that third book, but I am super fascinated by the concept of a predictive engine, essentially through psychohistory, that then runs sort of smack face into borderline
like
magical
human evolution,
borderline magical power to predict the future and see the future. Sure. And the potential. So maybe what Harry Seldon is getting up to here, if I can do a little theory crafting by bringing Gale in and talking about her being special, is if she is the Mule, she is that character with precognition. If he can convert her to his quote unquote religion here of psychohistory,
right, add her
and
into
use
the mix
her as a tool to further his plan, that might be all he needs to do, right? If he can co-opt the unpredictable element into the plan and set it on course for the plan itself, maybe that is enough.
And see, this makes a lot of sense with her talk about like looking at psychohistory. It seems like there's a couple pieces missing. She could be the piece. Her and Salver, this new race of, psychic potential humans, could be that missing piece that like Harry's already kind of accounted for. And that's why he selected her. That's why.
Right.
It's all super interesting. It's just so like, again, it's such a remix. Like they're really playing jazz with the material, which again, I appreciate.
Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely liked adaptations that have been right down the middle, like the first few episodes or first few seasons of Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, broadly speaking. I also like it when like The Leftovers, one of my favorite series, very loosely, the first season based on the first book, the entirety of the first book. I don't know if you know this, 2 more seasons of Leftovers. So like that's a perfect example of something that kind of really plays jazz. So,
but in Game of Thrones,
Walking Dead is the worst case of scenario where they kind of pretty much do the former, except for they just change things just to, amuse the comic book readers, I guess. So it remains to be seen where they're going with Foundation.
I think in stuff like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, stuff where you have adaptations of works, they're already very rich. I don't think anybody would call Foundation exciting or a rich experience. I think they would call it extraordinarily dry, but intellectually titillating, right? That's what Foundation is to me, but like that like doesn't quite work on television.
Mathematic scrolls,
right? I don't want that show on television, right? The adaptation of a show like this is so difficult because far more difficult than those other shows because none of that is in there. They've got to make it all up.
That book is not cinematic at all.
No. And so to convert it to something you have to watch is a monumental task, and it's going to require this kind of mix-up stuff. So I'm taking the series for what it is. I will be excited if they get through 1 book or 3 books or all the books by the end of this series. Whatever. I just want a compelling story in which the themes of the Foundation novels resonate, right?
And then the final point, this came out of David Goyer's podcast, the official one. Jason Conception asked him, what is in the vault, or what is the nature of the vault? And I thought Goyer was going to say, go fuck yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the Library of Babel, which is a literary illusion. And I'm like, hot damn. So I don't know about you. I went to Wikipedia, typed in Library of Babel, and this is what they say. The Library of Babel is a short story by Argentine author and librarian Jorge Luis Borges, conceiving of a universe in the form of a vast library containing all possible 410-page books of a certain format and character set. Borges' narrator describes how his universe consists of an enormous expanse of adjacent hexagonal rooms. Hexagonal? In each room, there's an entrance on one wall, the bare necessities for human survival.
Hexagonal, if you want to say it correctly.
Thank you. Yes, I don't really care to, but it's nice to get on the record. And then you have the bare necessity for human survival on the other wall, and then you have 4 walls of bookshelves. Through the order and content of the books are random and apparently completely meaningless, the inhabitants of this world believe the books contain every possible ordering of just 25 basic characters. In this language, you got 22 letters, a period, comma, and space. Though the vast majority of the books in the universe are pure gibberish, the library must also contain, somewhere, every coherent book that's ever been written or might ever be written, and every possible permutation or slightly erroneous version of every one of those books. The narrator
notes in that
format,
format, right? With that alphabet, with that character set in that length. Yeah.
The narrator notes that the library must contain all useful information, including predictions of the future, biographies of any person, translations of every book in all languages. Conversely, for many of the texts, some languages could be devised that would make it readable with any of a vast number of different contents. Despite, or indeed because of this glut of information, all books are totally useless to the reader, leaving the librarians in a state of suicidal despair. This leads some librarians to superstitious and cult-like behaviors, such as the purifiers, who arbitrarily destroy books that they deem as nonsense as they scour through the library seeking the Crimson Hexagon and its illustrated magical books. Others believe that since all books exist in libraries, somewhere one of the books must be a perfect index of the library's contents. Some even believe that's a messianic figure known only as the man of the book has read it, and as they travel through this library seeking him. Now, I've read Foundation. I think I got a pretty good handle of what the
vault
is. And this is super fucking cool. This is a really cool sci-fi concept on the order of psychohistory by itself, but it's not the vault that I know of in the book. The vault is also not a coffin containing the body of Harry Seldon. What do you make of this, man?
So is what's in the vault a data set of all possible outcomes that, when combined with the prime radiant, is somehow the key to psychohistory and interpreting
the prime radiant, the crimson hexagon? Because like psychohistory could, with the right variables, probably run forward and backwards and predict anything. You know?
Yeah, God, this book sounds fucking fascinating. I have to read Library of Babel now. Because my mind runs wild. Like, well, okay, you've already got a subset, right? It's a 410 page with 25 character set here. So it's already a limited number of infinity. You can further reduce that by examining history and seeing which of these books accurately describes the events of history, and then limit it to a subset of that as useful information, and then track that somehow into the future and see which books. I don't know. This is a fascinating idea, especially with the concepts of psychohistory and in its predictive power, right? And how you would ever be sure to any degree that one book, one outcome was the one that was really going to happen.
Like I said, we're not trying to nakedly spoil the show. So even in the spoiler section, I see no reason to tell you what the vault really is, just because, you know, some of you people can't help yourselves. But yeah, I find, like I said, this is a fascinating concept of its own, that like in this vault contains like every permutation possibly that could possibly happen, and the prime radiant is like a Rosetta Stone,
right,
that can kind of point and guide you to like which version of reality is true, or is it the missing puzzle piece that Raish is referring to, that they have faith that it's going to show up.
They're also playing a very dangerous game with book fans. I mean, I don't know, fuck it, right? Because book fans are already not on board with the show to a large
and also
degree.
They're a vanishingly small percentage of the human population. Like,
right? Yeah. How many people have read this sci-fi novel from 100 years ago? Not a ton.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
But they are like the people who are fans of Foundation, the novels. Some of them are already up in arms, but a lot of them would probably be up in arms if you significantly change the nature of the vault. So I wonder if they're going to do this as like a dual purpose sort of thing. Like, yes, it contains the vault as we know it in the books, but also there's another layer to it, right?
Well, especially this, like, the man of the book seems like it's an obvious, like, you just map Harry Seldon right onto that, but he's a dead man.
Yeah.
Traveling through the cosmos in a custom coffin that just happens to look like the vault.
Yeah.
But he's still dead.
Yeah.
He's still dead. Like, unless they're going to resurrect, like I said, I mean, they're talking
about destruction and rebirth in this episode. So
I'm telling you, it's Foundation 3 to search for Seldon.
Yeah, we'll see.
We just need Kirk and a Klingon punching themselves over some kind of volcano. Like the end of the Lord of the Ring.
Can I ask you, do you know how many pages Library of Babel is? Is it 410 pages long? I hope so.
I mean, what would that even mean? Because like it probably depends on the translation, the width of the pages. I don't see
length of the scroll.
Number.
Yeah.
They padded it. All versions of the Library of Babel are exactly they force it to be 410. So I don't know. I'm excited. I also want to read more about this. I want to see how long it is, because if it's a short story or novella, I might be able to polish this off before the end of the season. So
for sure.
Especially if it's going to be such an important key to understanding the stuff going forward. So God damn it, Goyer giving me homework. Jesus.
I love it. He's introducing me to things that I've not heard of that are fascinating.
Yeah, and that reminds me a lot of like Westworld and The Leftovers, where it's like the shit I learned along the way just researching into the themes of the show is almost as valuable and fun as the show itself. Yeah,
the quest for knowledge, right? It's all in this episode.
It is. It's the most noble endeavor that the human can engage in. I'm just sitting on my ass watching television. Being noble.